Welcome to the Quest Forums channel, and we have a question today that comes from West Africa. Somebody there wondering how God came into existence. This is a very complicated question, at least for us, just because of assumptions that we make as human beings. So we look at the world around us and understand that everything has a beginning, everything comes into existence somehow, and so we just apply that to God. He must be like everything else, and he has to have a starting point. That's not actually the way things work, though. The Bible explains that. I'll get into that in a bit. But first, I just wanted to think about the concept of God's infinity and understanding why it's a necessity. And so you take anything in the universe, I'll just use my phone as an example. How did it come into being? It came into existence because somebody put the components together, but because somebody else made the components or dug up the minerals that went into it or designed the elements, and then those people came into being themselves from their parents, who came into being from their parents, all human beings come from the dust, from the elements of the earth. You can just go back on and on and on like that, but you actually can't have an infinite string of such causes. So even though everything as we understand it has a cause, those finite causes, those things that then came into existence earlier themselves, they can't just go on forever. There has to be a stopping point because there's just not enough time and space for them to be infinite. And so what that has taught philosophers, they've come up with this concept known as the first cause. And it's just the idea that there has to be a stopping point. There has to be a place where there's a cause that began everything else, but didn't have a beginning of its own. It just always existed. And that's one of the philosophical concepts, one of the arguments for the existence of God, is that he is that first cause. And that's what we see in Scripture. So Scripture backs up this idea and really expands on it and makes it much more personal because, of course, we can't really know anything about God except for very general things on our own. We can't rely upon reason to know God. We're too limited to that, and it's for that. So instead, we need him to speak down to us, to reach down to us and tell things about himself. And that is what the Bible has done very frequently in this regard when it talks about God's existence and his nature. And I have just a few examples I wanted to share, starting with the very first verse of the Bible, Genesis 1:1, that says, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth." And so God created everything, nothing created God. He was already there, already existed. You get to the middle of the Bible, Psalm 102, verses 25 through 27. They say, "Long ago, you, God, established the earth, and the heavens are the work of your hands. They will perish, but you will endure. All of them will wear out like clothing. You will change them like a garment, and they will pass away, but you are the same, and your years will never end." So again, another statement of God's eternity. He doesn't have a starting point. The New Testament extends this to Jesus because Jesus is also God. He has the nature of God as the Son of God. And it says of him in John chapter 1 verse 3 that all things were created through him. And apart from him, not one thing that was created was created. And so again, he doesn't have a creation of his own. He doesn't come into being. He has always existed, and everything else comes through him. And then just like we had Genesis, the very beginning of the Bible, at the very end of the Bible, you have a very similar statement. In Revelations 22, verse 13, "I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end." And so just God saying that he does not have a beginning, he is the beginning. And that's what we need to understand, or try to. Again, since we are finite, since we're limited, since we have a beginning, it can be difficult to grasp this. But God does not have one. He has always existed. He didn't come into existence at a certain moment of time. He actually created time. Everything comes from him. And this is something that we can picture through philosophy and that we can know through Scripture. And so that's a great question. I appreciate very much you sending that to me. I hope that this does help somewhat with your understanding of that and others who have checked out this video. If someone has a question about the Bible, I'd love to hear that. That's what this channel, this ministry is for, is helping people learn about Scripture and about what God has for them. So you can send that to me, a comment here, social media links in the description, an email, whatever works best for you. If you would, please help out this channel by hitting a thumbs up and subscribing, and also consider a donation to my Patreon page. That'll also help to continue to grow the ministry of Quest Forums. Thanks very much for checking out this video, and until next time, keep looking up.